Breaking tonight, it's the jailbreak sparking panic with violent offenders on the run. How did nearly a dozen inmates, including alleged killers, slip out onto the streets of a major American city? And most important, where are they now? I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now.
Tonight, an urgent manhunt in New Orleans after several inmates, including alleged killers, escaped from jail. They left a message saying it was too easy. Did they have help from the inside?
We are investigating our own to find out exactly what happened.
Then the Department of Homeland Security is considering a new reality show. The stars? Immigrants competing for U.S. citizenship. Some are comparing it to the Hunger Games. The producer behind the idea joins me live. And later, Cassie Ventura wraps up her testimony in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial, but not before an audio recording of her threatening to kill a man was played in court. Find out how the jury reacted.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. We start tonight with that massive manhunt underway right now for 9 armed and dangerous inmates who escaped from a New Orleans jail overnight. There is now a bounty on their heads, and the sheriff herself is calling it an inside job, suspending 3 members of the department. Take a look at this new surveillance video showing inmates yanking on doors and then later running for an escape, all of them running off the loading dock early this morning in their prison jumpsuits. Sheriff Susan Hudson of New Orleans Parish says 10 inmates, many charged with violent crimes, escaped from the New Orleans Justice Center shortly after midnight last night. Police found one of those men hiding under a car in a hotel parking garage in the nearby French Quarter hours later. Prison officials realized the inmates had broken out not until a routine head count at 8:30 this morning. They say by that point, those men had been out and on the loose for nearly 8 hours. What is making this jailbreak even more controversial, authorities waited 2 hours before sounding the alarm to the public.
They could have been anywhere. We have to make sure that's exactly what happened. We have to pull all the video and find out what happened. That takes a little bit of time. Then we had to first prioritize talking to victims to make sure they were safe and making sure law enforcement could respond to them if they needed something.
Now, these fugitives are charged with a litany of crimes, including murder, burglary, illegal weapons possession, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment. Among the escapees is this man, 27-year-old Derek Groves, convicted of killing 4 people. He gunned down 2 of his victims at a Mardi Gras celebration back in 2018. Groves is known for having, quote, alarming familiarity with AK-47s and for boasting about his kill count. And take a look at these photos from inside the jail. The inmates writing on the wall above their escape hole, quote, too easy, LOL. They dug a hole in that wall behind a toilet and tunneled their way out to freedom after shaking their cell doors off their tracks. There were at least 4 supervisors and 36 other staff members on duty at the jail last night. Joining me now for more on all of this is former FBI special agent and founder of Sierra One Consulting, Rob D'Amico, and Joe Cardinale, retired New York Police Lieutenant Commander. I got to start with you, Rob. We have never seen 10 inmates escape en masse, almost all accused of violent crimes. This is a catastrophic failure in this jail. Rob, can you hear me? All right, Joe, you take this one. We'll get back to Rob.
Sorry. Is Rob there? If not, I'll jump on.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
So this is very, very unusual, have that many inmates. But I have to tell you, the fact that they are on the loose for that amount of time is more alarming than anything else. And this is something where you really have to look. I don't know what the inmate to officer ratio is in that prison, but they should never have gotten as far as they did.
Well, we know, Joe, we know that there were 1,400 inmates in the jail last night, and that there were 36 officers on duty, along with 4 supervisors. How does that sound to you?
It's kind of low. And we're speaking about some of the worst here. I mean, let's go back to 2023 in Chester County, Pennsylvania, when Daniela Cavalcante escaped. It took 14 days to get one man back, and the whole county was on alert there, and they had a big manhunt for him. But 14 days. Now you have one. I believe it's 9 now out of the 10 because they got one. So you have 9. So it's going to be tracking 9 individuals who have a very good head start on their escape.
Rob, do we have you back? I think we do.
Yes.
We can
Yes.
see from the photos of the wall where the hole that they somehow broke through. It's a wall behind the sink and the toilet that are normally in the jail. The metal bars above the hole are missing. Pipes were removed. Creating a hole like this obviously takes. How did they do all this with no one noticing?
Well, I think some people did notice, and that's why there's suspension, and that's why the sheriff actually talked about insider job. But what's really odd is with technology nowadays, you could have easily had AI incorporated to their camera system to detect movement when there shouldn't have been, and it could sound the alarm. And that's where people and manpower and technology have to be looked at and say, well, you can put simple AI on the back end of the cameras, and no one's supposed to be moving around, and you have 10 people moving, and it sets alarm off, even if the people don't recognize it. So there's fundamentally a lot of problems with this prison, but also the basically not staying up with technology to understand what your vulnerabilities are is almost criminal.
Joe, as we look at that wall again, they wrote too easy, LOL. They misspelled the word too, just writing T-O, taunting jail guards. They also wrote we innocent. It's unbelievable they took time to leave this message.
Well, that's how much time they had, and that's how cocky they were with this. And that's why you have to go along with the theory that there was inside help, and there was some, intricate inside help here. So I just think that this is something that is way too dangerous to ever occur again. But right now, the focus is on getting these individuals back into custody without anything else happening. And like you identified a couple of them, these are the worst of the worst. Now, these jails are antiquated. We have a couple of, the same cell doors that are like this in some of the jails, in New York. But the thing is, there are checkpoints, and I'll use Suffolk County as an example. There are checkpoints where you might get past one checkpoint, but to get to the next one, there's an officer there with a key that you cannot get through that door without that officer unlocking that door. So you're really confined to an area. Yeah. The fact that these individuals were able to break through that wall and get to an outside area and then get over a wall with Constantine wire on top, and they're laughing about it. They had this planned well in advance, and don't be surprised if there were cars waiting for them on the other side of that interstate.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. Rob, we do know the sheriff just said that she had been, in fact, this week asking for more funds for this jail. She said they, in fact, were understaffed. Still, you have to ask the question, not only did no cameras, nobody was looking at cameras to see this, as you point out, no AI to detect movement, but how did it go 8.5 hours before somebody did a head count of any kind or look into these cells and notice these men were missing?
That was my next question. When I started looking at the timeline, I said, okay, they escaped at midnight and they weren't notified. They didn't figure it out until 8:30 is your first head count, right? Where you don't have. So, and then they delayed notifying the public, which is actually, in this case, very important because you have violent, dangerous fugitives who will probably do anything to stay out of jail now actually in the public area. So I think the excuse of, we had to do all these other things to check with locals, and I think that was bad because you have to tell the public these people are out and they are extremely dangerous, that if you see anything, or if you come across them, to actually just call 911 right away. So I think there's some big mistakes that happen, even though they owned up to a few.
Yeah, well, we just saw video. The inmates, after they were managed to jump off the loading dock, they managed to scale the jail wall. And then here you see them running across an interstate that's near the jail. In one of these frames of video, you see a car driving past. These men are still in prison jumpsuits. It's unbelievable nobody called 911 to say, I just saw a bunch of inmates running across the interstate.
You haven't been down to New Orleans lately. One of my child goes to school down there, and I was very surprised at some of the stuff that was happening in New Orleans. But again, I think it's a cultural thing. down there that people just kind of, it's not me, it's not my problem, so to speak. Because if I saw someone in an orange jumpsuit, again, I'm law enforcement, first thing you'd be on the phone. I think if it was in the Midwest or somewhere else, you probably would have had that interaction with the public calling. But down there, it's a bit different.
Joe, what do police do now to try and find these men? They found one of them hiding under a car in the French Quarter. He sure didn't go far. The rest of them, we have no idea. They just, like in the last, I think about 15 minutes ago, they held another news conference. They're now offering a reward of $2,000 per man for any information leading to where they are. Will this help?
I think these inmates will offer them a lot more than that to help them get away with this. I really think you have to revamp this whole system right now. And as Rob said, I don't know what what that jail system, who they compromise. Who is compromised in there? Who are the people that are dealing with it? But this is not just in New Orleans. We have, correctional facilities across the United States that are undermanned, and they have to be staffed to a level that's compatible with the inmate to officer ratio. And the fact that they let 2 hours go by, I'm not accepting that from the sheriffs. He said, well, we had to wait and see if they were inside. No, they're gone. And even if they were found inside, it's better to say, well, we found them inside than to let those 2 hours go by. Those 2 hours, that's an eternity for an escaped prisoner. Yeah, we really haven't gotten a satisfactory explanation after now 2 news conferences from the sheriff, although Joe, it is interesting. She did say 3 employees have already been suspended. We don't know who they are or what their jobs were, but there's a clear indication. She said, we're investigating if this is one of our own. They clearly believe people in the jail were helping them. Oh, absolutely. And the fact that they already identified 3, there's a lot more that could be involved that probably are involved. But the thing is, you have to worry about who you're hiring these days. And that's why I'm saying with this shortage in policing across the United States, I think they're hiring people much too quickly. They're not vetting them properly, and this is what happens when you don't staff the prisons and you don't pay the guards, the prison guards and the correction officers. You don't pay them what they should be paid to make it a job worth losing and to make it a job that they take very serious. And a job where they will be immune to bribes that I'm sure they get all the time from inmates and their friends and family on the outside to help these inmates escape. Joe Cardinale, Rob D'Amico, thank you so much for weighing in on this breaking news story. I really appreciate it. Coming up for us, what if you could watch a TV show where immigrants compete for American citizenship? Well, that may become reality TV. I'll speak to the producer who pitched the idea to the Trump administration, and apparently there's interest. And later, Cassie Ventura wraps up her emotional testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. We're live from the courthouse in Manhattan as week 1 of the trial comes to an end.
Thank you for joining me here on NewsNation.
No matter where you are, America's fastest growing, down the middle, unbiased, breaking news coverage is always at your fingertips. Download the NewsNation app or go to newsnationnow.com to learn how.
All right, what do the Department of Homeland Security, American citizenship, and the reality TV show Duck Dynasty all have in common? Well, it's the seemingly mismatched elements all play a role in a brand new TV game show that's being pitched to the DHS. You heard that right. It's a game show. Apparently, the show will pit a group of migrants against each other in a season full of challenges at locations across the U.S. The winning migrant who proves they are the most American will get a path to legal citizenship. It may sound like a crazy idea, but it's reportedly getting serious consideration by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. The pitch for the concept and the reality show comes from famed producer Rob Warsoff, who's no stranger to the world of quirky reality TV shows. His credits include the hit franchise Duck Dynasty, which ran from 2012 to 2017 and was a big hit. Warsoff says this new idea will not be like the Hunger Games for immigrants, but rather a celebration of what it means to be an American. He says contestants will start off at New York's Ellis Island and then take a train to a different location on every episode and compete in various challenges that are all quintessentially American. It's like, for example, working on a car assembly line in Detroit or mining for gold out west. While DHS eyes the pitch, there's no word yet on what President Trump thinks of the idea, although we do know he himself is a veteran of reality television. You may recall that Trump co-produced and starred in The Apprentice and hosted it for 14 seasons. And while Trump may be vehemently opposed to illegal immigration into this country, he has been open to creative legal avenues of entry, most recently offering, for example, the $5 million Gold Visa card program, which offers fast-track U.S. residency to wealthy foreign investors. So, will this reality show path to citizenship ever make air? Let's ask the producer himself, Rob Warsoff, who joins me now. Okay, I got to ask, how did you get this idea?
I'm an immigrant. I'm from Canada, and I got this idea 20 years ago when I was going through the immigration process myself. I learned about premium processing at the time. For an extra fee, you could get them to look at your file quicker. And I thought, why isn't that a show? I mean, and I actually pitched this show under President Obama to a woman by the name of Bobby Faye Ferguson, who was the Hollywood liaison to the Department of Homeland Security. She was very receptive to it, and actually said, look, Obama's second election is coming up in a few months. Give me a few months on this to see if he gets reelected. And then after he got reelected, it was, it's the new administration. Give me a few months to settle in. And then I sort of moved on with my life. Unfortunately, she passed away. I actually took it back under President Biden. I spoke with another person at DHS. They were very receptive. They said they're taking it to Alejandro Mayorkas. And about a week later, he became the first non-president in American history to be impeached. And I said, well, there goes that pitch. And then I was able to bring it back again. Both of those administrations, by the way, both Democrats were receptive to this.
Wait, you've already pitched it to the Trump administration?
I have, yeah.
Okay, I thought you said Obama and Biden.
I did. Yes, both Obama and Biden.
And Trump. You pitched it 3 times to 3 different presidents, and so far.
Yes, and all of them were receptive, everyone.
But it didn't happen. Do you think it might happen now?
I'm hoping.
You say this show won't be a, quote, Hunger Game for immigrants. What exactly, how does this work? I mean, does somebody get voted off every week? And what kinds of competitions are they taking part in?
Yeah, I'm very happy you asked. So nobody moves backwards in this show. This is not, you qualified this show coming in as migrants competing in you said a path to legal immigration. That's not true. Anybody who takes 5 seconds with a critical mind to think about what this show is would only be able to conclude what it is, which is a celebration of America. We're very lucky to be American. It's an honor to be American. All the people on this show will be people who are already in the immigration process, who are all very likely to become future Americans. And all I'm offering is to jump to the front of the line and fast track that process.
So they're all immigrants who are not here illegally.
Correct.
Okay. Because, there's been a lot of controversy lately over people who are in the immigration process but are still getting deported. None of your losing candidates will get deported.
Of course not. That's ridiculous. I mean, I can't even believe people hear a headline and then they immediately, their imaginations run wild. I mean, I don't understand why people don't, even submit to a little bit of a fact-finding mission before they make crack judgments on things. Of course not. That's ridiculous. I worked on the first season of The Biggest Loser, and when that show was announced, people recoiled in horror at the idea of fat shaming and calling fat people losers and saying, these people have heart attacks and diabetes, and you're gonna exploit them on television on a reality show because they're fat. They recoiled in horror. And then people saw the show and said, oh, of course, this is this amazing, wonderful, kind show. That's exactly what we're doing here. It's The Biggest Loser for immigration, and we're going to put a face to all these people who are on this journey and want nothing more than to be a part of this country, and we're going to humanize them, and we're going to celebrate them. This isn't, you're off on a boat if you don't perform. Nobody's going back any further than whatever place they're in line, and they're all going to be great candidates and future Americans at some point. I'm just offering to speed up the process for one of them.
So where does this, I know that we've heard from the DHS spokesperson who said, we're seriously considering this. This is a great idea. Will you speak next to DHS Director Kristi Noem? Tell me how this would work.
I haven't spoken with Kristi Noem. There was an article that sort of suggested that this was her idea. I haven't spoken with her. No texts, no calls, no Zooms, nothing. I know that DHS is considering my project. I hope it continues to trend in the right direction. I'm not DHS. I don't know where they are at this exact second. I'm sure the last 48 hours has had them going back and forth in a million different ways, and I don't know where it stands. But I know that that I want to make the show, and that it will be made respectfully and safely, and it will be a celebration of America in the most positive possible way.
All right, Rob Warsoff, you knew this idea would probably generate some controversy. It has, but you've explained it well tonight. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
All right, Rob. Coming up for us, cash, ketamine, and Ziploc bags filled with baby oil. The jury in the Sean Diddy Combs trial hears from one of the special agents who arrested Combs at a New York City hotel last year. We're live from the courthouse with all the details. Plus, Cassie Ventura finishes her final day of testimony. Did the prosecution's star witness help the case or hurt it? We'll discuss. So she called him Pop Pop. He called her baby girl before he became a federal criminal defendant, and she became the star witness against him. Sean Diddy Combs' heavily pregnant girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, finished her explosive testimony today in the music mogul's federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial. Ventura was on the stand for 4 days, and the judge had urged both sides to keep up the questioning, the pace of it, to avoid her going into labor on the witness stand. She's due to give birth any day. Combs' lawyers abruptly ended their cross-examination this afternoon after showing a text exchange from 2012. In that exchange, Combs asked Ventura if she wanted to have a freak-off for the last time. Ventura responded, "I don't want a freak-off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives." Now, that fits the narrative the defense is trying to sell to jurors, that Ventura and Combs had a loving but very complicated and tumultuous relationship, and that she consensually agreed to take part in these freak-off sex sessions, and that she perhaps even enjoyed them. At one point today, the defense asked Ventura, "Do you still have love for Combs?" Ventura answered, "I don't hate him. I have love for what he was in the past and what it was." Jurors also heard an audio recording from 2014 in which Ventura is heard repeatedly threatening to kill a man who alluded to owning and watching videos of one of those freak-off sessions. The defense tried to show that Combs supported and worked with Ventura to prevent that video from leaking out, which would contrast with her earlier testimony that she was a victim who feared he would release the tapes as blackmail. Now, during redirect, when the prosecutors get to go back, prosecutors did work to get their case back on track, trying to show Ventura was forced into these obscene sexual encounters and that Combs controlled her through abuse and physical violence. They revisited that brutal beating in 2016 at a Los Angeles hotel where video shows Combs viciously beating Cassie Ventura after she tried to escape from a freak-off session. She told prosecutors today, quote, "He followed me into the hallway and tried to bring me back." Let's go right now to NewsNation anchor and senior correspondent Laura Ingle outside the courthouse for us in Lower Manhattan. Laura, these were 4 incredibly intense and grueling days of testimony from Cassie Ventura, but she's only a piece of the case. 2 other witnesses then took the stand.
That's right. And, you know, this really was a wild day, Elizabeth, because there were new shocking details that came out in court today, including a stunning development that was brought up by the defense that Cassie Ventura recently had a $10 million settlement with the Intercontinental Hotel that you just showed, something that prosecutors never brought up this week. Cassie Ventura was visibly actually taken aback as that figure was mentioned right in front of the jury. It was a major detail that was was left out until the very last minute. Then towards the end of the day, we heard from a special agent with the Department of Homeland Security who was a part of the search warrant at the hotel here in New York City where Sean Combs was arrested last year. The agent told jurors about what they found in the hotel, showing pictures of the inside of that room, which included several bottles of baby oil, bags of drugs like ketamine, MDMA, a device for mood lighting, and $9,000 in cash. And here is the wild part, Elizabeth. A lot of this evidence was not only shown in pictures to the court, but some of the actual evidence in evidence bags containing the pink powder that was ketamine. Then there was an orange pill bottle with Combs with the alias name on it for Frank Black. That is Sean Combs' alias. Those bags were passed around in the jury box. The special agent had the $9,000 in actual physical cash and fanned it out in her hands as she was sitting in the witness stand. But it was that last witness of the day who really left the court with a lasting impression for the weekend. Dawn Richard, a singer that Combs worked with in 2009 through 2011, testified that she witnessed Combs allegedly attacking Cassie Ventura inside his Los Angeles home, hitting her over the head with a black skillet, kicking her while she was in the fetal position on the ground, then dragging her by the hair up the stairs, where then she heard more violence behind closed doors. And Richard said she didn't call police. She was scared and said the next day she was at Combs' studio. They were in a back room, and Combs told her not to say anything, adding, "Where I come from, people who go missing if they say something." So back here on the stand, back here at court on Monday, we are expecting Richard to continue her testimony. Then we are expected to hear from Cassie Ventura's best friend and her mother. So a lot more to go on week number 2.
All right,
Elizabeth.
Laura Ingle, live downtown in Manhattan. Thank you. In front of the courtroom. Thank you so much. Let's go to our legal panel now. Jesse Weber is a NewsNation legal contributor and Law and Crime Network host. And Nima Rahmani is a former federal prosecutor. Great to have both of you here. Jesse, I'll start with you. The defense, obviously, on their cross-examination, tried to make the point that this was a chaotic, turbulent, unorthodox relationship, but that Combs did not force Cassie Ventura to do any of this. Did they succeed, do you think?
I think they had a much better day today than they did yesterday. You know, it's one thing to talk about the messages where she was seeing compliant about being, with freak-offs at the beginning of their relationship, during the relationship. It's entirely something else after the 2016 event, after the alleged rape in 2018. In 2020, their messaging, for her to say, "I don't hate him." The jury might have to digest, is it possible that this was all consensual? Now, I don't think it's the end of the day for the prosecution at all.
But don't they just need one instance when it wasn't consensual?
Well,
and doesn't that video, the hotel video, show that she wasn't consenting? She was trying to leave.
Arguably, and you and I talked yesterday about the plane incident as well. Look, I think that this is a stronger case for the prosecution. I think that at the end of the week, they're happy with this case because nobody can doubt that she was physically abused. Tying it to the sex trafficking or tying it to these freak-offs, there's already evidence she didn't want to participate in at least one of them. And remember, she could have said yes 99 times. The one time she says no, that's all that matters.
All right, Nima, what did you make of it? Do you agree with Jesse's analysis?
I do. Jess and I usually agree, so it's not surprising I agree with them here. I mean, clearly the government has established the physical violence. The defense is trying to walk that line and distinguish between the two, saying, well, the physical violence happened, it was mutual, but there's this sexual conduct that was consensual. I mean, starting just from the beginning of the case, the shock and awe evidence, her taking drugs until she threw up, being urinated on, having to have sex when she was menstruating and on UTIs. I mean, I don't think any human being could consent to that. And I think the jurors are going to take that into that deliberation room, notwithstanding the emails and text messages. I agree with Jesse. They're certainly good for the defense, but we're going to have an expert come and explain the psychology of abuse. Victims can love their abusers. Mm-hmm. They can use those words of affirmation. And we're going to have those corroborating witnesses, like Laura said, Dawn Richard, and others next week that are going to testify. And by the way, they weren't in love with Combs. They're going to testify that they saw all this conduct as well. So I think the government is in the lead here. And frankly, I thought the defense was going to be much more aggressive during their cross. I expected a Camille Vasquez, Amber Heard type situation the past couple of days.
Yeah, but Amber Heard, Nima, Amber Heard wasn't 9 months pregnant. I don't know. I think that Sean Combs' defense attorneys had a very tough road.
But when Anna Estevio was chosen to do the cross. And again, she's very experienced, but now you've chosen a younger female. This isn't an overbearing old man that's cross-examining the star witness in the case. And then you had Tenny Garagos deliver the opening. I thought there was a very specific reason you have these younger females, because you're going to go hard. Again, this may be part and parcel of the defense's strategy. Maybe they think the text messages and the emails were enough. I don't think so. So I thought they probably should have gone harder, in my opinion.
Jesse, what do you make of the fact that, let's set the stage here. The prosecutors let Sean Combs know, we're going to arrest you. His lawyer said, let him surrender. We'll fly him to New York, check him into a hotel suite. We'll await you guys to come and arrest him. They knew he was in this hotel in New York only to be arrested. What is he doing with mood lights, cash, drugs, and boatloads of baby oil and lubricant?
He knew he was being investigated for the freak-offs, and what, does he bring the exact evidence of freak-offs? I mean, you can't make something like this up. And by the way, it goes to the idea that he wasn't just committing this 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but allegedly at the same time. And I think that is so important for the prosecution's case. And by the way, goes to the idea why he never made bail multiple times, right? You think about, he shows up and he ultimately gets apprehended with this material. By the way, I just want to mention one thing that Nima said. You know, look, you can't go so strong against Cassandra Ventura because you know she was physically abused. Put the video aside. Look at the photographs. Look at the corroborating testimony. This is a very, very narrow case for the defense now on which they can argue. And I agree. Maybe they didn't do enough. Maybe they had to go a little bit, focus more on the text messages. But at the same time, it is a gray, complicated case. This is not him getting convicted. The jury will not accept that if he abused Cassandra Ventura or sexually abused Cassandra Ventura. That doesn't mean Sean Combs is guilty. Racketeering, sex trafficking is a higher standard.
But Nima, he's not on trial for being a complete, an unadulterated, awful human being. He's not on trial for beating up women. Sadly, he should be, but he's not. Those are state crimes. He's on trial for racketeering and sex trafficking. Is the prosecution making the case on those specific charges?
I think so. I think racketeering is easier because there's different ways to get there. You can get to racketeering with prostitution, with extortion, with bribery. There are many RICO predicate acts. Sex trafficking, admittedly, is going to be tougher. You need that coercion. You need that force. So a little bit more of an uphill battle. Obviously, the prostitution charges, I think the government has that in the bag. That certainly wouldn't be a big win for them. But this is a big question I get. We're talking about domestic violence. We're talking about rape. Even reporters in the courtroom, they're texting me, Nima, this is a sex trafficking case. This is a racketeering case. Well, I say, listen, this is the nature of federal law and prosecutions, right? There generally are no federal rape charges or federal domestic violence charges. If there were, believe me, Combs would be prosecuted for all of this. You got to kind of, point to my former district attorney in Los Angeles who was soft on crime, who didn't bring these charges. Otherwise, Combs may have faced justice years earlier.
Jesse, finally, I just want to talk a little bit about, I think we lose sight sometimes of what's involved and what's in the circus around this trial that is happening currently in Manhattan. Sean Combs used to be one of the wealthiest men in the music and fashion industry, worth nearly $1 billion, immensely powerful in many, many cultural areas. Today, every single day, we have had lines of people for days and days waiting to get into that courtroom. People are paying professional line waiters, I think that's the word for it, I don't know.
Line sitters.
Line sitters. To stand in line through the middle of the night to get into this court. We had a fight break out outside the courtroom yesterday between supporters of Combs and supporters of Cassie Ventura. This has become quite an event.
This is a highly emotional case, and whenever you have a big, high-profile case like this, you see the crowds. The difficulty here is there's no cameras, there's no audio equipment, so people are trying to get a front row seat. There's a difference between us repeating the testimony and actually seeing it for yourself. And this is, I was in the Harvey Weinstein case almost every day. Everybody was trying to get a seat to that because it's kind of surreal to think about somebody at that level.
At the pinnacle of
what
power
he's being accused
and
of,
wealth and privilege and to be sitting now in this courtroom facing these charges and facing a sentence of life in prison. Jesse Ventura, Nima Rahmani, two of the very, very best. Thank you so much.
Jesse Ventura.
Elizabeth. Did I do it again?
You did it again. That was 2 nights in a row.
Nima, last night I called him Jesse Ventura too, and because it's Cassie Ventura.
I don't know how to feel, but I've been
Okay.
called worse. It's okay.
You know what? You could be governor of Minnesota, maybe.
I missed that.
Jesse Weber and Nima Rahmani, two of the very best. Have a great weekend, gentlemen. I'm going to practice saying Jesse Weber all day Saturday and Sunday. Coming up for us, prescription drugs are literally, apparently, defying gravity. We're going to introduce you to a company that is making pharmaceuticals in space. It is an out-of-this-world medical advancement. Right now for something that sounds like a straight out of science fiction or from Star Trek, a startup company called Varda is making pharmaceuticals in space. It does this by launching a capsule the size of a washing machine hundreds of miles above Earth's surface into a region called low Earth orbit. It's in this gravity environment, gravity-free environment, where tiny pharmaceutical crystals can be actually formed. Now, crystals of a quality that are not usually found or created in labs here on Earth. Crystals essential to making pharmaceuticals. The capsule then re-enters the atmosphere, plummeting to Earth with its precious cargo. What you're watching here is the company's very latest capsule re-entering and landing someplace in Australia on Wednesday of this week. So how might this change the medication you take? The founder and CEO of Varda Space Industries, Will Brewy, joins us now. Will, welcome to the show. So I've got to ask, why are drugs made in space better than drugs made on Earth?
Hey, Elizabeth. Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's a great question. So in space, you actually described it very well. There is no gravity, and that means that the chemical systems and the chemical output is different than it would be here on Earth. You cannot reduce gravity on Earth. And so gravity is another knob that the pharmaceutical industry can use in creating a new formulation that would otherwise be impossible on Earth. It's kind of like a temperature knob, where you can change a temperature knob on Earth to change the chemical system and the chemical output. We are introducing a gravity knob, which opens up a whole new world of formulations that you otherwise couldn't have access to.
Now, the one example I've been given is that, for example, a drug that we have to currently take through an IV, and it takes a lot of time, could instead be given very quickly with one shot?
Exactly. So this drug has already been flown on the International Space Station, and we're kind of commercializing it now. And so as those crystals change their shape, like you were describing earlier, we can change the formulation of the drug from an IV bag to a shot. And so we don't discover new drugs per se at Varda. We just add that gravity knob so that we can change the formulation and have it be a better patient experience.
So you're improving the drugs as opposed to creating or inventing the drugs. Does it make the drugs better then?
Exactly, yes.
And are they more expensive because they've been up in space and doing this?
So the formulation is tied to the... Oh, are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Your audio's just
Okay,
taking
great.
some hits. Go ahead and start again, your answer.
No problem. So the formulation can impact the efficacy as well as the patient experience. So if you take a drug that's a pill or an inhalable or an IV bag or a shot, the way you take the medication has a big impact on the efficacy, but also on the patient experience. And so when pharmaceutical companies determine which formulation they're going with, the patient is at top of mind. And what we do is we open up the envelope of what chemistry can do so that you can introduce formulations that you otherwise wouldn't have on Earth.
Does this make these drugs more expensive?
So we add about 2% of the cost of the drug, but we can reduce then again because you don't have to go into the clinic, for example. So if you don't have to go into the clinic for your IV bag and you can have a nurse come to your home to introduce a shot, we can produce things overall cheaper for the system.
How many drugs do you think you can improve this way?
So this is the beauty of it. Gravity is a fundamental force of physics, which means that all drugs are able to be tested in this new environment, very similar to a temperature knob. Whereas if you can now introduce refrigeration to the pharmaceutical industry, it's a good analogy. Introducing refrigeration, cold doesn't make drugs better per se, but it does open up the envelope of what drugs are possible or what formulations are possible. Similarly, by introducing microgravity, you can open up those formulation space.
And this capsule that just landed in Australia this week, was this experiment a success?
Yeah, we already have delivered the data to the customer. The video that you showed obviously is very beautiful. The team here is very excited. We're one of only 2 commercial entities flying a commercial capsule like this in the world, SpaceX and ourselves. And we just re-entered our 3rd vehicle, and we're excited for 4th and 5th coming up next. The name of the game here for BARDA is increase cadence so that we can move more drug formulations to bring them to patients sooner and more often.
Absolutely fascinating. Will Brewy of BARDA, thank you so much. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Elizabeth.
All right.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Coming up for us, we have some breaking news. The taped conversation. Remember the recording of President Biden being questioned by a special counsel, Robert Hur? And Robert Hur, who described Biden as having such a terrible memory. He was like an elderly gentleman with memory issues. We're finally getting a chance to listen to that audio tape ourselves. Chris Cuomo joins me live next to discuss. All right, Republicans have tried for a very long time to get the tapes of this interview between then President Biden and former special counsel Robert Hur out to the public. Well, it's now being leaked. It is said to have long pauses from former President Biden, stumbles, lapses in memory. Chris Cuomo joins me now. We knew this tape was going to come out. It was just a matter of when.
Yeah, who cares? He's an old man. Sounded like an old man. Hur came out and said it. He's going to be sympathetic as a witness because he can't remember things because he was an old man.
And by the way, there's
Does it
now
mean that he
about
has
to be 3
Alzheimer's
books.
or disease?
Yeah, there's an about. This is like there's a
But the
lot of
books are-
reporting out there on this.
The books are BS. The books are BS. Elizabeth, the idea that you covered it in real time, and it's not like me, remote up in New York, but I'm very much in the political mix with these players. These guys all hang out together down there. You're telling me that Jake and his co-writer, Tapper, don't know people in the White House and eat with them and drink with them and knew what they needed to know? These books are all just making money off pretending you're part of the disruption of the media.
There's been a backlash, too.
It's all a joke. It won't, because the media doesn't pick on its sacred cows. You know, if they want to come on your show, if they're worried about your outlet or your platform, you know, they don't go after their own. They want to get invited to the Christmas party. I'm telling you, it's a club, and I've never been part of it for good reason.
Well, as an outsider, I'm right there with you. Chris, happy Friday. Take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.